Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it is time for a new set launch. Cyber City, the set 14, is coming out. Here we go. And so with that comes a new patch naming, because as you know, this year we changed how our patches get named, which means this is the patch 14.1 rundown. Now, as always, technically, these are subject to change. Although, with this airing basically Tuesday and me filming it Monday night, pretty skeptical anything changes. But just calling out the risk. And yeah, so here we go. It's a new set. Now, typically with these new set rundowns, I've already done a PBE rundown, which goes into everything in great detail. If you really want to know like how exactly every champion works or exactly how every trait works, you should probably watch that video. This video will kind of go over the high level of what you can expect, as well as show the most updated numbers from all the PBE testing. So if you're looking for the most accurate numbers, that can be found here. But yeah, this is it. This is a new set. So let's dive right in and show what it's about. So we've got 13 new one costs. Big thing to note here is it's 13, not 14, like the last two sets. So 3-starring one costs is a little bit easier here. Your tanks are going to be Alistar, Mundo, Jax, Poppy, Silas, and Vi. And your damage dealers are going to be Kindred, Kog'Maw, Morgana, Nidalee, Seraphine, Shaco, and Zyra. Some standouts here. Shaco's your AD stacker. If you can get him early, get lots of kills, stack AD. Pretty fun. We've seen him have pretty good success, although he got nerfed quite a bit on PBE. But even still, he can be really powerful if you get him from something like Build-A-Bud or Worth the Wait. On the tank side, don't sleep on Vi. Vi's really, really good, even though she only has essentially, she's good for Cypher, but trying to get that, as well as just really good one-cost Vanguard. So those are some standouts to consider. On the 2-cost side, Darius, Echo, Alawi, Rost, Shyvana, and Skarner are your tanks. And then we have Graves, Jhin, LeBlanc, Nefiri, Twisted Fate, Vayne, and Veigar as your damage dealers. Some standouts here. Alawi, really good early, has a very high base heal. So if you can play her on an early board, you'll be surprised when she heals for like 400, 500. Can be really good. Rost provides your team a little bit of armor just from being a Divinicorp, which can be really powerful. And then on the damage side, Graves, very good early if you want to get him going. And then one of my favorites, Twisted Fate. If you play 3 Syndicate and put the hat on him, he switches between throwing his cards, which is really fun. You can get a gold card, which generates some gold. So, pretty cool. 2 costs. On the 3-cost side, Braum, Galio, Gragas, Jarvan, Mordekaiser, Draven, Elise, Fiddlesticks, Jinx, Rengar, Senna, Varus, and Yuumi. On the tank side, some standouts here. Gragas will be played on a lot of boards just because he activates 2 Bruiser, which gives your team 100 health, and then his Divinicorp bonus is another 50 health. So just running him and another Bruiser is 150 health for your team, which is pretty good. So consider that. And then Mordekaiser just has really, really good traits and can be very tanky. So expect to see a lot of Mordekaiser on some of those mid-game boards. On the carry side, Fiddlesticks was explored a lot on PBE. He's been toned down quite a bit. That being said, he can still be played very, very well. Stack as many Archangels as you can on the guy. He does some pretty good work. Senna's another really weird one. She has a very low attack speed, but she has a very high base AD, which makes her really good for things like Hurricane, as well as her attacks will just cleave. So if you're up against something like a 6 Bruiser, she can do a lot of damage. So she's pretty good. And then Yuumi's a fun blue buff user. If you get an early Yuumi with a blue buff, play around her. But yeah. On the 4-cost side, one thing to note here is there are 13 4-costs. This is the most we've ever had in a set. The idea being there'd be even more endgame options than ever before. Some item holders that carry the same items. That being said, there are less melee champions than ever before, with really only Zed being in the melee space. So things like Sterix, Titans, BT have gone down in value because of that. But overall, still a lot of builds you can play around. Cho'Gath, Leona, Nico, Sejuani are going to be your tanks here. Sejuani is going to be on a lot of boards. She's got that big AoE CC she's had for a couple sets. Cho'Gath, a little more narrow. You're going to see him on a lot of 6 Bruiser boards. Outside of that, he's not really a big standout. And then we have Annie, Aphelios, Brand, Misfortune, Vex, Zaya, Zed, Zeri. I already named these. Zeri, Zed, and Ziggs. For these ones, Vex, pretty flexible, blue buff user, can do some pretty big crit damage. Zeri, going to be one of the most fun Ginsu's users we've ever made, dashing around, making a bunch of clones. Yeah, so, and then like I said, Zed, pretty hard to play, but now that people are starting to figure it out, expect to see some Zeds tearing up some backlines. Yeah. And then the 5-cost space. This is, I know I'm biased, but this is one of the best 5-cost batches we've made in a long time. There's a lot of really clever stuff in here. Aurora is going to pull a unit from your bench. She's really good at pulling in strong units. She gives them a big attack speed buff. So hilariously enough, having her pull in an Urgot gets really, really cool. Garen is one of the coolest traits we've ever made. God of the Net. Garen is going to allow you to mod your units into different traits, which opens them up to being really powerful with things like Divinicorp, Strategist, Boombots even. So some really cool uses of Garen. Kobuko, this guy has it all. If you play at least 2 Cyber Boss, Kobuko has a big AoE CC, much like Sejuani, but also does a ton of damage, and then also has a passive that gives him a giant shield. So Kobuko, very valuable utility. Renekton, probably one of the highest cap 5 costs we've ever made, because not only does he attack like crazy, but he also consumes the person behind him with Overlord, pairs really well with like a Senna, because he'll eat their health and their AD and give it to himself, making him one of the strongest units we've ever made. Hilariously enough, you can do some cool builds where he eats like your 3-star Shaco and gains a ton of AD. So, yeah. Samira, a little narrow. She really works well with like a Street Demon build with at least like 2 or 3 amp or even a 5 amp build. But once she does, she's kind of like a really high cap. She'll do a lot of AoE damage with her spinny ult. Urgot, from a pure power perspective, is one of the weaker 5 costs heading into launch. Uses things like Ginsu's, IE, Hurricane, stuff like that. But Urgot can get a lot of kills, and when he gets kills, he can spawn items and gold. So if you're looking to cap your board even higher, finding a way to get Urgot in there to generate some more power can be really good. Viego, very powerful because he summons an extra unit with his Soul Killer trait, and then he just does a lot of damage. This guy's a beast. JG Hodge. This guy casts twice and entire backlines are gone. Near the end of PvE, people were really figuring him out, and he kind of became the premier 5 cost. Got a small nerf heading into launch, but he'll still be very, very good. And then finally is Zac. Zac's a little hard to play. If you find an early Zac, though, on like 4-1, 4-2, make sure you put him in your board, because once he gets about 10 or 15 blobs, you'll start seeing blobs in your shop. Buy those. He'll get really, really strong. And if you start to hit like the higher numbers, like 30 plus, this dude is the best 5 cost in the game. You just have to jump through a lot of hoops to get him there. So, but if you can, the dude's a beast. All right, on the trait side, again, I'm not going to go over all these too much in depth here. Divinicorp, pretty flexible trait. We've seen be very strong near the end of PvE. Expect to see a lot of Divinicorp be played. Syndicate was strong for most of the PvE, especially at 7. If you ever hit the 7 piece here, it's going to be very powerful if you can find 2 Syndicate emblems. So definitely consider this, especially on a Garen opening game when you've got the Golem with 3 emblems and you get a Syndicate emblem. It's not quite a prismatic, but it's still very, very strong, much like 6 Artillerist on live. Otherwise, 3 and 5, pretty fun to play. Nitro, we saw a lot of Nitro. It was S tier near the end of PvE. Just got one final nerf here. But being able to summon a T-Hex early, this trait's power really determines on how fast you can find the 2 stars and the 3 stars of this guy, scale up that T-Hex, get him really powerful. Boombot, pretty hard to play. We haven't seen a ton of Boombot past 2. That being said, if you can find the right setup for it, it does do a lot of damage. So consider that. Anima Squad. This one's interesting. I said this on the PvE rundown, and I'll say it again. You're always going to be offered a weapon choice. The weapon choice doesn't matter too much. There aren't really big differences. From what I've seen, at 3 and 5, you basically get to choose between magic and physical. If you're planning on going like a Xayah carry and you have an even shroud, probably pick the physical option. If you're planning on going like a Yuumi carry and you have sparks, probably pick the magic option. There's a Spark Swarm build I really like where you take the Spark Augment and build all the magic ones. Pretty fun. The 7, though, what I'll say is that the choice shouldn't matter, but if you have a lot of offensive power, take the Annihilator. It does a big burst of damage at like 6 seconds as true damage and then nothing else. So if you can burst people down and prevent them from healing from that, it's good. Otherwise, I like the Tornado. The Tornado seems to be the one that does the most effective damage from what I've seen. Gatling Gun feels a little hit or miss to me, but give it a try. It should be close balance-wise, but yeah. All right, Golden Ox. This one's a weird trait. The 2-piece Golden Ox is very, very good. If you can get this early with like an Alistar and a Graves, you can generate a little bit of revenue. You can power it up. And even in the late game, having just like Annie plus Jarvan or Annie plus Viego or Raphelios plus Jarvan, The two-piece actually provides a lot of value to the trait. Like Aphelios can get like 30% damage amp from just the two-piece. Very, very good. 4 and 6, a lot harder to play, but if you can, they're very fun. My recommendation is if you get an early emblem, you can consider playing it. Without the emblem, it's really hard because when you're running 6 golden os, you really struggle with frontline. So you kind of have to be playing from very far ahead or have like hit a 3-star Jarvan or something. But if you can, you're going to farm a lot of extra gold, a lot of extra loot. It's kind of like Conqueror in that regard, where I wouldn't play more than 2 unless you're really far ahead. Cypher, this is the lost streak trait this game, and unlike Chembaron, you can play this and then pivot out, or you can stay in. You cash out at certain rounds based on how much intel you've lost. The bigger your streak, the more intel you'll get. Pretty fun. It's very powerful. I expect to see within a patch or two some of the top players complaining about how strong it is once they've all figured out how to play it and optimize it. So pretty strong. Cyber Boss, this one was a little weak near the end of PvE, but both Poppy and Ziggs got buffs, so hopefully that helps. And Kobuko, as I mentioned, is a very powerful Cyber Boss. The way this one works, though, is if you're going to play one of these champions as a carry, you need at least 2. It increases the AoE of their spells, so they do a lot more damage. 3, small bump. And then 4, they all get that AoE bump, and your main carry gets even stronger. So, yep. Exotech, this one, basically, you get 3 items. They're random each game. There's 7 different items, 1 for each champ. They have recommended users, but they're each sort of decided around a specific champion. For example, Repulsor Lantern is designed for Jax. Hollow Bow is designed for Varus, but anyone can use them as far as your Exotech units go. And the more items you have equipped, this does not mean Exotech items, it's just items in general, you get more power. So for example, if you have a Zeri and 7 Exotech, and she just has Ginsu's IE Gunblade, that's 3 items, she'll get 650 health, or excuse me, 675, if I could do math, and 27% attack speed. Plus you've got those other 3 items, so pretty decent trait. Near the end of PvE, it was sort of like low B to C tier, but it did just get another buff, so consider playing it even if you saw it on PvE. Street Demon, it's a lot like KDA, where there are hexes on the board. If you place your units in hexes, they get buffs. But there's also 4 signature hexes. Those units get an even stronger version of the buff. And you get 4 signature hexes, no whether you're playing 3 or 7 or anything like that. So make sure you put your best units on those hexes. That's kind of the new part of Street Demon. But you'll see a lot of 3 Street Demon, especially because it pairs really well with Nico and Echo both being strategist, or Brand and Zyra both being techie. So you'll see a lot of 3 Street Demon in some of those comps. All right, then the classes. Bastion's your typical armor and MR one, where they're very tanky for the first 10 seconds. Then that falls off a bit. Slayer is going to give some AD and Omnivamp. The big twist on Slayer this time is that the Omnivamp, if there's overhealing, will heal someone else. So for example, if you have a Vayne in the back firing, she's actually putting a little bit of that healing onto someone like the Mundo or the Jarvan. So, yep. Amp. This is a really interesting one. It scales each of these champions uniquely. Nidalee, her lightning will hit more targets. Yuumi gains mana generation. Samira fires more bullets, things like that. We've seen a lot of really capped comps play 5 amp in the endgame around Annie and Samira, where she gets really strong with 5 amp and the right items. So definitely consider this if you are trying to play like a level 9 comp. Can get really good, even worth carrying some of the weaker champions like Nidalee and the Fury. Dynamo, mana gen for your team, even more for them. Pretty good in like an Elise comp. Misfortune can use it pretty well also. You need a good frontline for it, but it's also a very good emblem. If you can get a 4 Dynamo with an emblem and put that on someone else, you can generate a lot of mana. Techie. This is our typical AP comp. This time there are 8 of them. The hope is that there's a little bit more frontline, which is why the 8 piece is back this time, even though set 6 or set 13 did not have it. It only had 6. That being said, my recommendation is probably don't try to hit 8 without an emblem. Without an emblem, it's a little tough. You have to high roll that Viego, and even then can struggle a bit. But there are some versions that work around like reroll Mordekaiser and Brand, or reroll Seraphine and Zyra. So give them a try. Vanguard was very strong, a lot of PvE. It did get a small nerf at 6 heading into live, but generally these are very tanky. And the fact that you also get Rost in your comp when you're playing this means your team gains that armor and MR from Divinicorp. So they end up being pretty tanky. Vi's also very powerful. Brahm's pretty good. Bruisers, they gain a lot of health. There's a lot of really good bruiser comps that you can play around. Darius can have a ton of health. Gragas, Mordekaiser, and then Cho'Gath is a beast with 6 bruiser, so consider that. Rapid Fire, this is our auto attack speed trait. Getting 2-piece gives your whole team 10% attack speed, which is good. 4 you'll see a little bit of. 6 is pretty hard to play without some emblems. That being said, the emblem does give +2 range, which is kind of cool. So you can come up with some cool like rapid fire Renekton builds. Marksman, pretty decent comp. We saw a lot of 4 Vanguard, 4 Marksman comps do pretty well with Xayah and Aphelios. Since they're a pair, they can work well together. Executioner, this is going to be your crit trait. The big thing to note is if the target is below 20% health, the bonus critical strike damage is doubled. So they can do some big damage if they get that execute and heal up off of that, which makes them pretty good with things like BT. This is also where, like, if you have the items for like Titan's Resolve or Sterix and things like that, Rengar's probably your best bet. Yeah. And then finally, Strategist. This is a new twist on the Strategist from before. Units in the front hexes gain damage reduction. Units in the back gain damage amp. This applies to your team, but the Strategists get triple. So for example, if you're running 5 Strategist, your team is getting 15% damage amp, but Ziggs is gaining 45% damage amp, which makes him pretty good. All right. As far as other changes you can expect, emblems. Emblems, if they're from a class, were pretty boring in previous sets. So this set, we added some twists to make them a little bit more exciting. Executioner emblems gains the target will ignore 40% of the armor, and that's on top of Shred and Sunder. So this is one of those few things that will go even further. Bruiser emblem, we saw a lot of Bruiser Fiddlesticks be really good here because it also, in addition to the health, you're also doing 1% bonus damage. So if you've got, 4,800 health, that's 20% bonus, and you're just really, really tanky. So that's kind of cool. Bastion emblem, you gain 10% of your armor and MR as ability power. So if you've got 100 armor and MR, you're going to be able to gain 10 more AD and AP. So pretty cool. Rapid Fire, this is one of the more fun ones. You gain +2 range. Like I said, Rapid Fire Renekton, pretty good. Slayer is going to improve the champion's healing by 25%. Pretty cool since Slayers also have Omnivamp. But also if you have like a Gunblade on a Senna, this can be pretty cool. Marksman, this is going to deal physical damage, reduce their armor. Pretty good on like Misfortune, actually, is a pretty cool user of this. Techie Emblem, this makes them gain even more AP. I really like this on some of the tanks that scale really well with AP. Like, hilariously enough, like 3-star Alistar with Techie is a really good user of this. But yeah, any of the tanks that aren't already a Techie that scale, have really good AP scalers, can do pretty nutty stuff with this and help your Techie frontline. Strategist, this is really good on, like, for example, a Rengar, because it's going to give him the damage amp and the durability, which can be really valuable. Vanguard Emblem, I'll be honest with you, I haven't found a great user for this set. This one might actually end up getting a buff. And then Dynamo Emblem, on cast, gain damage amp per mana spent. Like I said, I think this one's really powerful. All right, encounters. Encounters are back. Here are the ones that returned. Golden Gala, Prismatic Party, Prismatic Opener, Prismatic Finale, Component Anvils, Artifact Anvil, Scuttle Puddle, Crabgrave, Loot Subscription, Trainer Golems, and Gold Sub. Now, you'll see some of the ones that were exclusive to 13, like the Warwick one or the Mel one, are not back. Those are gone. But you'll also notice these numbers don't add up to 100, and that's because some of our other opening encounters apply to hacks, which is our set mechanic. Hacks show up in a lot of different ways. One of the ways they can show up is this like 2-for-1 augment thing, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, there's lots of different ways hacks can show up. There's going to be about 3 per game, give or take. So if you remember encounters, they're like that, except much more controlled, a little less warp the game wildly, and a little more, here's a fun little twist. One of the ways a hack can show up is the opening encounter. A bunch of these are things like you're going to have an extra augment, or Aurelian Soul, which gives you a treasure armory on 4/7, or Azir, which moves all the augments into like stage 2 and 3. Egg, which gives you a hacked egg that over time will hatch into some rewards. And then some of the more contentious ones here, Lucky Shops, Mecha 2-star Shops, and Golem Armory. Although, again, I didn't fix the misspelling here. Golem Armory, haha. But yeah, so these are some fun ones. Give them a try. Augment hacks can also show up here. I talked about it a little earlier. We have the 2 versus 1, where you can either choose like 1 prismatic or 2 gold. These create some pretty cool combinations that you should give them a try. And then the other one on the left here is when augments, you'll have one category on the left that's hacked to be a specific category. So you can see here it's formation, and you'll get extra rerolls on that category and a little bit of a bribe to help you take it. So for example, if you take mentorship here, you'll also get +3 gold. Pretty cool. There are different categories here: build around, chaos, econ, items, traits, combat. The one worth calling out here is black market, which does not come with a bribe. But if you see a black market, you should consider taking it because they're very powerful old augments that we had removed that had been kind of balance challenges. But they're back for fun. Black market games will get pretty wild. Things like Think Faster back, Final Reserves, Blue Battery. So be on the lookout for black market augments. Finally, there's a couple other ones here. One of the most popular ones from PBE has been the gold split armory, where it will tell you to choose one. Do you want 13 gold or split with 25 gold? Another example here might be, do you want 10 gold or split 50, which is a bit more extreme one. Each of these sort of forcing you to make a choice, and then based at the end, you'll either get, if you chose the 13, great, but if 5 people chose to split the 25, you'll only get 5 gold. Pretty cool, fun, social game theory thing that pops up all the time. I can't wait to see all the different ways that it gets metagamed. There's carousel hacks, which will provide extra component anvils, components, training dummies, duplicators, and even in the late game, some artifact anvils and completed item anvils. And then the other one is that sometimes when you're killing a PvE mob, you'll see them be a little hacked, and when they die, they'll drop a hacked loot orb that can drop like health pickups, unstable components, which essentially are components that have Pandora's transforming built into them, a hacked egg, or just lots of orbs and get a ton of extra gold that you wouldn't get but normally. So as far as information on this wasn't in the PBE rundown, but this is more detailed stuff. I also posted these online if you want to check them out. But here are the loot tables for like the hacked eggs. So if you take the 4-round egg, the 9-round egg, or the 13-round egg, here come the choices you can expect from them. Also, I mentioned the treasure dragon. The treasure dragon is unique this time on 4.7, and that it also comes with an augment. So you actually get to like roll for an augment in your armory, which is kind of cool. Here are some of the different choices that you can see. So for example, one of the choices you might see is a silver augment, a component, a remover or a reforger, and 21 gold. And so, or you might see a prismatic augment and just a remover and a reforger. So you can kind of roll for the choice that you think is best here, see if you get that, but you can only roll so much. But yeah, lots of different options here. Pretty cool. Some other system changes that went live from set 13. Level 8, the 4-cost odds have gone up 2%, and level 9, the 5-cost odds have gone up 2%. This is a pretty big deal, especially at 9 from what we've seen, because now you'll be able to more reliably hit the carries and the 5 costs you're looking for. This has led on PBE, and it's PBE, so take it with a grain of salt, but this has led to a lot more capped comps where you're running like 3, 4, even 5 legendaries sometimes. Again, it's PBE, so we'll see if that lasts. But we did want to make it when you hit level 9, you went level 9 to find 5 costs, you should probably be able to see them at some point. And we wanted to improve that consistency at level 8 and level 9. So that's in the game. Some item changes. This also wasn't in the PBE rundown, but over the course of the PBE, we did have to make these changes. First off, Hurricane and Radiant Hurricane both got nerfed. They lost some base AD and some bolt damage. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you look at like our general item power framework, Hurricane was way over budget and has been for quite a while. The last time we buffed it, it was like, we really shouldn't be doing this buff, but we did it because nobody was building the item. Long term, maybe there's some work to do here with this item. But this set, there are champions that use this item very well. Vayne, Senna being the big two. Zeri uses it decently. Kog'Maw uses it decently. And because of that, the power difference between this champion's with and without this item was getting too high. This should be on track with things like Deathblade. It shouldn't be far and above Deathblade. So they did get nerfed. Steadfast has been underbuilt for a while, and we just said, screw it. We wanted it to be an item you're actually excited to build. So it gains 50 more health, 2% more base durability, and 3% more max durability. So Steadfast is better. Gunblade is another item that has ended up a little too good this set. So what we actually did is we buffed the base Omnivamp for the holder from 15 to 18%, but the ally healing went down from 25 to 20%. so that we don't end up with a lot of comps where it's like a Zeri just pumping out way too much healing, keeping a front line alive. And then finally, Radiant Sunfire and Radiant Morello get a very tiny nerf. This is very minor, but we did need to nerf these items slightly, so we went with the nerf that we thought would affect them the least amount for fun, which is the duration of the burn. Before, if they burned somebody, they were burned for the rest of the round, 30 seconds. Now it's 8 seconds. It's still the 2% burn, which is very powerful, but if you kill the user of this and stop applying it, it'll actually wear off now if you want to survive. So hopefully this is the slight nerf we're looking for here. We don't really want them to be heavily nerfed, though. All right, augments. Now here's the thing with augments. I'm not going to go over every single augment that changed. There's a lot, and some of that's in the PBE rundown. Better resources for this exist online on our various partner sites. If you really want to know every augment in detail, go check those out. But some highlight points to cover. Some of the augments have been removed. Most of the augments we removed were because they don't interact with the hack system well, or didn't really fit the set well, or have just been too complicated. Cooking pot, for example, we actually added back in, so it's not even correct here. But things like power up don't work really well with the hack system. We brought a few augments back, things like underdogs, calculated loss, hustler, and more, to kind of refresh the pool a little bit. Overall, the general power of augments is down because we were giving you 4 in a lot of games. The multiplicative power got a little too insane, so we had to deflate some of that a little bit so that having 4 augments just didn't lead to these insanely inflated games. So you're going to see a lot of, if you see an augment in set 13 and then you see it in 14, it may have gone down 10, 15, even 20% in some cases. So be aware of that. But generally, we mostly targeted the ones that were overperforming anyway, so should help. And then finally, the last change is that trait augments, if you could get a trait augment on 3-2 or 4-2 when you're already in the position, like let's say you're already 6 Enforcer and your 4-2 augment is Enforcer Emblem, it was overpowered. It was way too good. So what we've done is that you can still get crests and crowns on 2-1. So if you want to get an early, Anima Squad emblem, great, good for you. After that, though, if you're already, let's say you're deep in Divinicore, the only way you're going to see an augment on 3-2 or 4-2 is a prismatic called a circlet, which just gives you the emblem and a champion, no item. This is intended to be a nerf to those 3-2 and 4-2 emblem augments. They're still decent if you're in the position for them, but they're not, the guaranteed wins they've been before. And then there's other stuff. There's lots of other non-gameplay stuff that I'm not really going to go into deep here, but there's lots of other stuff to be excited for in this set. Talker's Trials is back. Talker's Trials, if you want to teach people how to play TFT, great place to play it, where they can play at their own pace. PvE rounds, really well crafted, 30 levels, a lot of fun, and it's going to stick around the entire set. So Talkers will be around for you the whole time. Double Up got a bunch of updates. Double Up has the partner cannon, which allows you to share items and champions a little better. Gift armories are free. Pre-made lobbies, better UI. So Double Up's pretty exciting. Bunch of cool new cosmetics, including the Project Vane one. There's a Janna one that's really awesome. And then something you've all been clamoring for years. The Battle Pass has a claim all button. Yes, that's right. We have the technology. The team worked hard. They got it out to you. You can claim all with the press of a button. Sweet. And there you go. If you're watching this, it's Tuesday, which means based on your region, the patch will be in your hands anywhere from 12 to 24 hours from now. Some of you in OCE might be getting it in 5 hours. But yeah, excited for the set. I'll be on tomorrow doing my hyper roll grind. I took the day off. Going to play hyper roll, show you how that grind does. I've never done it on stream before, so that should be fun. But yeah. And there you go. It's a new set, Cyber City. Generally, what we've seen from PBE is that it is one of the better sets as far as pure TFT goes. Pretty high skill expression, but just good baseline TFT. So if that's what you're looking for, give it a try. Let us know what you think. I'm excited to see what happens. And yeah, the competitive scene this set's going to be pretty intense with everyone trying to qualify for the new stuff in set 15. So yeah. All right, there you go. That's it for me. I know I sped through that pretty quick. If you need more than that, or if I went through anything too fast, there's a bunch of good resources out there, whether it be other people's videos or the websites that have all this info. So definitely check those out. And then also watch people play the game or just play it yourself, which is even better. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for me. on behalf of the entire team that worked on this set, thank you so much for being around for another set. And here you go. Here's to 4 months of awesome Cyber City. Until next time, take it easy.